Alright, Chapter 9, Engine Failures and Defects. 9-1, testing D side valve pistons, testing knocks and pounds, testing loose piston heads, what to do in case of emergency, haulage and disabled locomotives, broken tender draw hook, bent cow catcher, broken gauge glasses, hot coupling rod bushes, serious knocking, broken motion, valve gear, and spring, etc. Alright, engine failures, Chapter 9, engine failures and defects. Testing the D-slide valve pistons, C-slide valves, and pistons. The D-slide valve is fitted with the engines using the saturated steam and the outside of the emission type. The engine crank is set on the top of the bottom quarter, and either of these positions on the slide valve will be central, covering both steam ports. If reversing lever is in the central neutral position, when the cranking on the top of the quarter, the slide valve moves in the same direction as the lever. Therefore, if the reversing lever is moved forward, the valve must move forward. The back steam port is open and the front steam port is in the communication with the exhausting cavity of the valve. When the crank of the bottom quarter and slide valve moves in the opposite direction to the lever, therefore, when the reversing lever is moved forward, the valve moves back. The opening from the steam port on the back steam port communicates the exhaust cavity of the cavity of the valve. The engine should be set with the rank on the bottom of the quarter for preference, as this most convenient for the uncoupling purposes if such required. And it is first ascertained that the front and the back cylinder cock passages are open and clear. The drain pipe through the steam chest are to be and to the back cylinder cock, which the pipe is attached to the cylinder cock casting, is uncoupled and pushed aside and blanked. The Westinghouse brake, handing brake, and applied with reverse lever placed in the central position with the reversing lever central. The combination lever should be in vertical position with the Welch valve gear. The outside of the rocker arm should be vertical with the Steffens link motion. The regulator is open with if the steam blows through the front and the back cylinder blows up the chimney. It indicates the valve on the side is defective. The reversing lever is then placed in the forward gear to open the front of the steam port. If the steam issues the back cylinder cock, it indicates the piston rings are defective. The same test then is carried out for the opposite side. If any time the desire to know which port is open with the reversing lever in a certain position, it is only necessary to note that the position of the cranking pins, e.g. the big N, is on the top quarter and is desired to move the engine forward. Lever is put forward and is now that under steam the wheels would go forward and the crank pin and the piston would go forward. For this to occur, the back steam port would necessarily have to be open and emitting steam into the back end of the cylinder behind the piston head. If the reversing lever is placed in the back gear, the wheels will go and the crank will be back also. If necessary, because with the steam entering the front of the port of the end of the cylinder acting on the piston forcing it back, the action takes place irrespectively type of the valve gear. In other words, noting the direction in which the crank pin is required to travel to turn the wheel, it will be seen that the piston will be moving in the same direction. The side of the piston which the steam is acting to give the necessary movement indicates which port are admitting steam to the required end of the cylinder. Alright, 9-2, testing of knocks and pounds. The engine is set forward for cranking on the bottom of the quarter. The westing of the brake and the handbrake are applied. The cylinder cocks are open. The fireman is instructed to open the regulator slightly and then move the reversing lever to the full floor gear to the full back gear. By close observation of the last motion in the big ends and small ends, the crosshead in the guide bars is in the eccentric arm and value motion can be noted. To be testing to the engine axle boxes and also coupling bush rod knocks, it is necessary to release the westing brake off in the engine only. The fireman is instructed to again chug the engine as before. The further observation will relieve the lost motion of the journal in the air axle boxes or the axle boxes and frame. Will also reverse any worn coupling or rod bushes. The same procedure must be adopted on both sides of the engine in manner that the defects can be localized. and corrected entry can be placed in the bin with the repair book. 9.3. Testing for loosening piston heads. The fireman instructed with changing the engine man as previous test by placing one end of the packing drawer on the piston end and holding the other end to the ear, and a sound effect will be obtained. This effect will indicate whether or not the piston head is loose or around the rod. 9.4. What to do in case of emergency. When a serious accident or breakdown occurs, the first more important duty is to provide the safety of the public. This is done in accordance with the procedures attained by the operation manual. The boiler must be protected. Any assistance deeming necessary must be immediately obtained. The engine has to be uncoupled and all parts removed must be secured firmly in the piston position on the engine. It should never be attempted to uncouple a connecting rod at a big or small end until it has been provided beyond all doubt that there is no steam in the cylinder. Reversing gear must always be in the position such as the valve will close. Both steam ports and the cylinder cocks must be fully opened or removed. Lubricator must be shut off and the brakes fully applied. BB-15 eccentric rods are not to be removed. The main connection rod plus the valve rod from the transferring shaft to the valve stem is only to be removed. The piston must be also blocked forward. 9.5. Haulage of disabled locomotives. When any defective running necessary for the engine to be hauled dead, both connecting rods, eccentric rods must be removed when possible. Couplings must be left on. The usual precautions of securing a crosshead in the forward position, making the engine safe to be hauled, must be complied with. And in the case when the engine is defective, one side of the necessity of the removal of the connection rod on the defective side of all coupling rods must remain on the engine, unless defects in such that it does not allow this. 9.6. Broken tender draw hook. If the hook is broken using a D-link out of the van equipment to connecting the hole in the drawbar to the coupling, it may be necessary to ease out of the drawbar by slacking the large drawbar nut to get sufficient clearance to fit the D-link into the position. If so, the bar must be retightened up to the link after the link is placed in position. If the shank is broken, the whole unit will have to be removed and replaced within the unit from the engine. 9.7. Bent cow catcher. Places a sleeper across both rails and place another sleeper between the rails with one end supported across the sleeper and to the other end of the cow catcher. Then move the engine slowly forward. Under doing this, the point of the cow catcher will ride on the inclined sleeper. The cow catcher will be raised in the normal position. A few heavy hammer blows on the front of the bent portion will straighten it is set, but the cow catcher will straighten it sufficiently to give it clearance to the working home. 9.8. Broken gauge glasses. When preparing to put a gauge glass in, first open the trail cock and leave it open until the glass is in. Take off the water column top plug, packing nut and brushes. Withdraw the old packing. Make sure the stuffing box and the bushes are quite clean. Cover this should be placed over the lower portion of the column while the old packing is being placed and being cleaned out of the top of the portion. The steam in the water cocks should be open to blow out any of the packing of the dirt which might block the passages. Place a glass of exact length through the top of the portion column through the two rubber washers. Push and packing the nut at the top and through the packing nut at the bushes and two rubber bushes at the bottom of the column. Hold the packing nuts and bushes with a piece of cord tied with the top of the cock. Rest the glass firmly on the bottom, setting the hold and glasses down firmly. Insert the double torn asbestos card and the two rubber washers into the box, stuffing the box, making the firm forcing down with a piece of wood. The inserting another double turn of the asbestos card, place the bushing packing in the running position, tighten the nut, only the hand tight. Place the top of the end of the similar manner with replace the tight and the plug cap, and then open the top of the cock slightly until the glass is heated with the steam passing through it, slowly opening wide water with the steam cocks closed in the trial cock. Always use the threads on packing nuts cap plugs before replacing them on engines having water columns fitted with hexagonal packing glands and hexagonal rubber packing rings. Care must be exercised to see that the gland fits correctly in the stuffing of the box before the gland nut is tightened. 9.9. Hot coupling rod bushes. If a bush becomes overheated to show the signs of seizing on the crank pin, remove the set of studs and taper pin to allow the bush to remove in the eye of the coupling rod. Plug the taper and pin at the bottom of the hole. Fill the taper and hole with oil and place the cork slightly in the top of the hole. 910. Serious knocks. In the event of a if in the event of the knocking being heard and the location not being known, try the crosshead cotters for tightening with a hammer. If the cotters appear to be tight, put the engine in the reverse and the steam and have the steam applied. If the cotter is bent, movement by the piston rod in the crosshead will be observed. If the event of the cotter being bent, withdraw it and reverse it so that the bent portion will engage on the end of the pushed-in rod slot with the cotter will drive home. 911. Broken motion or valve gear, spring, etc. Broken crank pins, rods, or other components of the motion valve gear will require the attention of the locomotive rolling stock maintenance supervisor. The locomotive may require towing back to the box flat depot. Arrangements are to be made with the return passengers back to Swan Bank Station or other means necessary. Chapter 10. Storing steam locomotives.